Okay, we now have a guest that is very well known to us over a long time, that we have been working towards the same goals for many, many years, but thanks to Dave Kraft's continual dedication, he's the director of the Nuclear Energy Information Service, NEIS. I was trying to remember the organization that you used to head before NEIS.
Was there one?
No.
Yeah,
No,
there was something.
Well, there was a group called Citizens Against Nuclear Power.
There you go.
I was a member of. but not
CANP.
ever. In fact, one of your guests here today, Bob Rudner, was a member of the group.
Well,
Hey, Bob.
in any case, it's been a lot of decades, and your consistency and your dedication are greatly appreciated, Dave Kraft.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland. We want to hear what you have to report.
Well, before we get into the Davy Downer show, which is usually what happens when you have me on, I want to do a couple of honorings, if that's okay.
Sure. We're up for the honorings.
Okay. Good. Well,
God forbid, or with the great spirit forgive, that we just be critics of everything.
Okay. Well, the first one is actually sitting to my right here. I wanted to just thank Tom Clark for being
This is unexpected.
for being a community treasure for decades as
Amen
well.
to that.
Former head of
And a hell of a chicken farmer these days.
Chicago
Woo,
Media
yeah.
Watch. I mean,
Let's hear it for Tom Clark.
Good photographer.
it's an honor to be on the same stage with Tom
Well, thank
because
you, David.
his organization and his work helped us along for decades, getting our message out to an unresponsive media and an unresponsive public. And I have an opportunity to thank you, so I'm not going to pass that one up, Tom.
Well,
So
thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. And multiply that statement by many times. The groups that you have given highlight information from them for more folks than you'll ever meet. Good
Well,
work, Tom.
Let me just return the favor. Dave Kraft's work, almost a solo voice at times, although his colleague Linda took our training 2 or 3 years ago, and I have at least monthly emails from Linda trying to get stuff out.
I don't think anybody mentioned, we're talking about the Community Media Workshop.
That's right.
That's
Thank
what
you.
Tom headed up for many years and just retired, and now he's a photographer again and a chicken farmer and a babysitter.
And a grandpa.
And
Congratulations.
a radio,
But-
And a radio
host.
This is a gentleman and an organization that has taken on ComEd and organized utilities and somewhat fearlessly for over 40 years. And we've needed that voice because we're the most nuclear state in the country.
Yeah.
And it's ironic to see the economic struggles that utility is now facing because wind and solar, I may be getting ahead of Katie's questions here, wind and solar are beginning to overtake, who thought I would ever say that in my lifetime, the cheap nuclear option that we've had in the state for so long. So great work for 40 years, and hope you can continue it to the extent that we need to.
So give
have
us
that
the
voice
good
out
and
there.
the bad. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mutual Admiration Society is finished.
Okay.
I think you just said nuclear.
Well, second honoring. I got to get one last one in.
Oh,
and then
last
we'll
time?
go.
Okay, second honoring.
I just wanted to mention that on May 18th, which was a Sunday, I lost a good friend. She was a 97-year-old woman that many people here might know. Her name was Elizabeth. Sometimes people would know her better as Betty Benson.
Betty Benson.
And Betty tirelessly worked as an individual for decades. She was a member of the Wellington Avenue Church, United Church of Christ, worked against the death penalty. Even in her 80s and early 90s would be showing up at vigils, at death penalty vigils, writing governors. She was one of my best volunteers until she stopped using the public transit in her early 90s for good reason. And it was just an amazing person that I think many people feel was very close to sainthood. And it's a loss. It was time for her to go. She had lived a full life. But I wanted to let people know that there will be a life honoring ceremony at the Wellington Avenue United Church of Christ on Sunday, June 15th from noon until they finish. And in her case, that should go on for days because the world owes so much to Betty, and we're really going to miss her. So,
Bless her heart.
Thank you.
And in her transition.
all right, down to business.
Down to business. While you're pulling out your stuff, the couple votes again to the legislature
Yeah.
this week. So I got a scary notice from you.
Several of them. They were firing away at us. So.
Yeah.
Are there any other kind of...
Well, it's good. You get my attention. So the resolution prelude to bailout for unprofitable newts and National Anti-Renewables Campaign came from you this week. You're always so full of information. What happened, David Kraft, Director of Nuclear Energy Information Service, to that important legislation this week?
All right, well, we'll start with the micro and then go to the macro, because that's how this is going to go. And I know you were mentioning earlier, it's like, who would have thought 30, 40 years down the road? NEIS has been around for 33 years, watchdogging Exelon, ComEd, the nuclear industry, you name it. And you were asking earlier, Mike, what's the lay of the land? Did we get anywhere in the last 33 years? You know, is anything different? And the answer is yes and no, like with everything.
Yeah.
But what I saw in Springfield last week, it was like, you know, going down the rabbit hole. It was like a bad LSD trip or something, because
Often
we wouldn't know.
The old adage of you know, the two things you don't want to see made in life are law and sausage really holds up.
Yep.
And in fact, I was thinking earlier when we were talking to Tom, I was thinking, you know, don't take this as an insult, but you're the kind of guy who needs to be down in Springfield, but I wouldn't want to wish that on you after what I saw in the last week.
Wouldn't want to wish it on anybody, really.
I mean, this is a legislature that, while it was ramrodding through all kinds of great things that would subsidize Exelon Corporation like they need it, they had a bill out there which would have regulated kids' lemonade stands and bake sales.
Jeez.
So this is what we're dealing with down there.
Jeez.
It's astonishing. Now, I'm an outsider looking in. I pity our friends and colleagues who are down there day after day, working the halls, doing the politics that needs to get done, I guess you would say. So let's get down to the specifics. It actually began last November when the now chairman of Exelon Corporation sort of announced that, gee, our nukes aren't making as much money as they should.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, like we've only been saying that for 30 years that this would happen.
Right.
So he kind of let it slip, and people kind of glossed it over because he said, oh, but we're not going to be going to the state for a bailout. Don't worry, no bailouts. Then the next part of the episode was a great story done by Julie Wernow of the Chicago Tribune. She went and dug out the numbers, which indicated that every nuclear power plant in Illinois, now we've got 11 operating reactors and 6 sites, every one of them were losing money for the last 5 years. This is not good if you're running a business, you know. But
yes, we do
she
know.
actually dug the numbers out and was showing and what this meant. And then so, again, Christopher Crane, head of Exelon, was mentioning, well, we are a business. And, you know, in business, if you're not making a profit and you can't turn it around, you have to cut costs, which means he's actually considering closing anywhere from 3 to 5 nuclear reactors in Illinois.
Oh, that would be good.
Now, on the surface, that is good news, and we're not opposing that at any stretch, because we've always been in favor of closing nuclear, replacing it with renewables. The problem is he started using what I call the give us what we want or we'll shoot the puppy extortion thing. And what he was talking about is if we have to close these reactors down, just think what it'll mean when we lose 2,300 jobs all at once. 3 communities don't have a tax base anymore. How will they fund their schools, their fire departments?
We'll figure it out.
Ain't it awful, folks, you know, if these things close down. And so that kind of started getting people's attention, and it came to the attention, of course, to Speaker Michael Madigan of the House.
Whose attention is...
So what happened next was... and I'll circle back to this later. Exelon Corporation is spearheading a national effort, which is bringing in other nuclear utilities, other trade groups, the Nuclear Energy Institute. ALEC is involved in this. I'm sure you're familiar with ALEC and what they're doing, which has an agenda to, number one, make sure that the operating reactors we have start getting subsidized. Okay? Free market, right? So they're going to go after subsidies around the country, not just in Illinois. And the second piece is that they are going to push back hard on renewable energy and on energy efficiency. And we already see that happening in other states. Yesterday there was an announcement that the legislature in Ohio is backpedaling on building new renewable energy as part of the law that was already in place. We are seeing that pushback in Illinois as well. So this is part of a national campaign. It's orchestrated, and now we're going to get to the Illinois component of that. About 2.5 weeks ago, Mike Madigan announced that he had a meeting which was with Exelon Corporation people and unions, in which he cut a deal. And the deal was this. Exelon promises that they won't close down those 5 reactors for a year if Mike Madigan would not fix a law called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. This is a law that's been in place for about 5 years now, and the purpose of the law was to incrementally add renewable energy to Illinois. That would be wind, solar, geothermal, on a regular basis, maybe 1 or 2% a year, until we hit 25%, which was the target date was 2025. Well, there's a little problem in the law where they can't release the money at this point to actually build that renewable energy. So this needed to be fixed, and the environmental groups like Sierra Club, Environmental Law and Policy Center, and others were down negotiating on how to fix this. And they really thought they had a really good bill, bipartisan support in place until 2 weeks ago, when Mike Madigan announces, in exchange for keeping those reactors open for a year, he's not going to bring up the fix. Meaning, $250 million of money, which should have gone to build renewable energy, is frozen in place. It ain't going to happen.
Well, at least it's not going to nukes.
Right. But it was supposed to be dedicated for the purpose of building renewable energy. So that was the first cut. Mike, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I'm curious why the economics of the nuclear industry went so far off the rail. This, mind you, Little Bell wasn't going to be charging us in our meters anymore. Nuclear was going to be so cheap. And of course, it never factored in the decommissioning of these plants, which we still have to pay for at some point.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
For a waste dump that still hasn't been developed. But that's a discussion for another day. Can you help us lay people figure out why these mega utilities are suddenly so challenged with their economic model that they have to come running to the cash-strapped state of Illinois to get a bailout?
Well, the great irony of all of this is that it started with the free market-loving Commonwealth Edison Company in the late 1990s. Prior to I think it was 1997, 1998, we were in what was called a regulated market. Each of these utilities had a little fiefdom called a service territory where they were obligated to provide service. The wires, the poles, the transformers, but also providing the generators, the nuclear plants, the coal plants. In 1998, ComEd lobbyists went to Springfield and said, maybe we should change this. Maybe we should get away from that model and go to the free market. You know, free market is good, you know, the government is bad, you shouldn't have the government telling you how much money you can make, blah, blah, blah. So they changed the law themselves. They wrote the laws in 1998, which gave us a market-based territory instead of this regulated service territory thing. And other states, it's a patchwork quilt around the country. Every state gets to pick how they want to do it. Are they a regulated market, or are they a, market-based thing? So we picked the market-based. And in the free market, what's the buzzword? But competition. Competition will keep prices down, right, Tom?
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So they launched this, whatever you want to call it, Trojan horse for them, I guess, back in the late 90s. Well, it turns out now we have this big natural gas boom going where the price of energy has nosedived, coupled with the fact that people got smart. Rather than pay ComEd or Exelon all kinds of money, they figured out it's great to be energy efficient and not have these energy pig houses going up, So energy efficiency cut into the sales. And ComEd, and then it morphed into Exelon, was based on selling electrons. That was their product. Just like a heroin pusher will sell you heroin, ComEd and Exelon will sell you electrons, and that's how they made their money. Well, of course, consumers caught on. They stopped using as many electrons, and the natural gas people and then the wind people started selling the electrons for less. So now we have this competition going, and suddenly these enormous, gigantic nuke plants can't compete.
Shut them down.
So that's how we got to where we are. And now Now Christopher Crane of Exxon is saying the market doesn't appreciate the positive values that nuclear power brings to Illinois, such as these nukes don't produce greenhouse gases when they generate electrons. Okay, we concede that. I've been on your show many times and I've said the same thing. That's true. But you also don't contribute to global warming if you don't breathe. You know, take every second breath and we cut it in half, you know. So it's kind of ridiculous because wind power and solar power also don't produce greenhouse gases. But this was the selling pitch, is like, we're not appreciated in this market. And we're being beaten up by the natural gas people and by the wind people. And all of these subsidies going to renewables, tisk, tisk, tisk. We never get into the subsidies of nuclear,
Right.
which are enormous. In fact, the biggest subsidy hogs in the country are the fossil fuel industry,
Right.
oil and gas. We don't talk about that. So Chris Crane comes to Mike Madigan and says, we got to fix this. We need your help. So that's where the trade-off came 2 weeks ago. And we thought that was bad. That was, you know, but it wasn't.
You mean it gets worse?
It gets worse, yes. And that's what Katie referred to as, we got this horror story of a press release from you, Dave Kraft. And
Yeah, so keep coming up
All
to
right.
date. Bring us
So
up to date on.
the next step of all of this was a very simple House resolution. Now, it was not legislation. It was not a bill. It was merely a resolution. But when you read the resolution, the implications of it, if it does get enacted into law, which they're planning for the next legislative session, are horrific for renewable energy. And this is where I go back to what I said earlier. This is part of a national campaign.
Right.
If these resolution pieces are put in place, it will mean the death sentence for renewable energy for the foreseeable future, and energy efficiency as well. This resolution, House Resolution 1146, and you can see this on the NEIS website, www.neis.org. We have all kinds of materials on the website. Do a number of things. In the resolution, they ask 4 state agencies to prepare reports for the legislature by November, but after the election, of course, which would come to the conclusion of why we need nukes and how bad things would get if nukes were shut down. So they want to do studies, but they want to prejudge the outcome before they gather the data, you know, and that tells you the reliability of what you're going to get. It's study to show, not study to know. So that's one of the things. The second part of the resolution, which is so bizarre, is that the state of Illinois would petition the Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level, the U.S. EPA, which on Monday, coming up, is going to be announcing new clean air standards for the state, all the states, on reducing global warming gases. The state will petition the EPA to order the state to use nuclear power to meet the new proposed greenhouse gas standards.
They really have this wired, don't they, so to speak?
Am I getting across what this means?
Yeah, you're getting it across at this table.
Is
I'm
it a
not
done
sure.
deal already? I mean,
Well,
I got a number of questions, but
Yeah.
on this one, what kind of clout does do the oil and gas and wind people have?
Sure.
Because it seems to me that unless they have investments in both sides of things, they wouldn't necessarily be for this legislation.
Right, right.
And where is it something that Quinn could veto if he wanted to?
Yeah.
And
So what can we do about it is
Yeah.
what you're really asking here. Well, I'll tell you what we did do.
That's what I'm really
And then I'll get to what we can do. Just to finish the story, but
Yeah.
to show you how Orwellian or Alice in Wonderland this whole thing was.
And Randy and
When the resolution was coming up to be voted on, it was assigned to the House Environment Committee, excuse me. And we had some friends on that committee, Elaine Nekritz and Robin Gable of Evanston. We had about a half dozen folks out of 16, which we knew we could at least talk to these people. So we sent our little fact sheet to the whole committee, not just to the 6, in preparation for the vote in the committee, which would release it to the floor of the House.
and again releasing what is actually a resolution, not a law.
Not a law, but the
Right.
resolution.
Okay.
What we did not know, and we sent 2 of our board members to testify against this resolution, was that there are little rules on how the House operates. And one of the rules that
I
got
like
invoked,
that. Little rules.
little rules,
Little rules, they're
For them.
secret.
Michael Madigan's playbook.
Not for the little people, but for Michael Madigan. Michael Madigan, as Speaker of the House, and also the head Republican as the minority leader, have the power to temporarily remove people from committees and replace them.
Jeez.
So the morning of
Shades of Richard J.
of the hearing in the Environment Committee,
Oh, you're
Mike
kidding.
Madigan comes in an hour late. They wait for him to put his little spiel in, and he had all kinds of Exelon people testifying and others. He replaces the 6 members of the committee who were most likely to vote no, and he replaces them with hand-picked people to vote yes. Guess what the vote was? 16 to nothing. And I saw a press account from the Rockford Register-Star which says there was bipartisan support for this resolution moving out of the committee to the House floor.
Was there no outrage at all anywhere?
I think people were so stunned they didn't know what the hell to do. I mean, it
Well,
was just
and also, you're telling us
so
this.
Soviet. You know, it is just so Soviet.
Oh, jeez, Louise.
So when are we having Robin on to talk about the
Yeah,
last session?
soon, very soon.
I
I'll call
talked
her
to
in a little
about
while.
this. So this is how this thing got out of committee, went to the House floor, and this is the other thing we didn't know at the time was when the Speaker's resolutions come to the House floor, it's a courtesy that nobody votes against it. So, and one last piece, if you didn't think that was bad enough.
Head slap
At the
after
end of
head slap.
The resolutions get voted on at the end of the legislative day at 4 o'clock. And they're usually bundled together and voted on as a package. So before I could even get online to watch this, the vote was over, everybody left the room, and the resolution passed. Now, bear in mind, it's only a resolution, but it sets the stage for the next round. And the next round is where we have to go after him. So what
And
can
when
we
is
do?
the next round?
Okay. Next round could be as early as the November session, the veto session.
veto
coming up,
session.
when the EPA, the U.S. EPA, will have already announced its standards for clean air, for greenhouse gases. Now they can go back and say, oh, this is not a subsidy that we're asking for. We're not asking for a bailout. We're asking for legislation that'll help us be in compliance with the law. So again, it's the Orwellian doublespeak of it's not a subsidy, it's compliance with the law. So what can people do? Now, I'm going to piss off a lot of folks. Can we say that on the radio? I think
Too
that's
late.
okay.
You just did.
Whatever.
Bleep it out. Whatever. This may ruffle a lot of feathers for people, but folks have to understand that after what I told you, if you really think you can influence what's going on in Springfield, well, go back to bed, you know. We can go down there and we'll fight the good fight. We'll draw the line in the sand. We'll do the harakiri thing in public. We'll do our best thing just to let people know we're down there fighting. But, the idea that we can actually move Michael Madigan within Illinois is ridiculous. So the goal has to be, how do you influence Michael Madigan from an 800-pound gorilla that's not in Illinois? Okay, so our plan is simple. We asked people to call the Speaker's office and protest this absolute travesty that took place the last week.
Got a number?
Number one, yes, we do, as a matter of fact. The Speaker's office number is
217?
217-782-5350. Now, Michael Madigan also has a Chicago office.
Yeah, let's do that both.
773-581
581.
8000. And these also are posted on the NEIS website at www.neis.org. So the first thing we had asked people to do in response to this resolution was to call his office and, of course, say we oppose it. The second thing was this. It's very simple. We have watched this horror story of legislation orchestrated by the Democratic Party for long enough, and we are withholding any contributions and any offer of volunteer time in the November election cycle if it passes. So any candidate at any level, president, senator, whatever, no, we're not going to contribute anymore until you give back what you took away.
I'm for that.
Now that's the first piece. The second one is, I'm sure everyone listening here gets deluged with emails and phone numbers from all of these Democratic national committees saying donate to our
Today
cause.
is a big day. It's the end of the month.
Right.
How many emails do you have right
So
now?
when you get
And then
those,
a quarter.
in the little comments section,
Yeah.
you write in there, we are not making any more contributions until Michael Madigan rescinds this resolution.
What's the number with the resolution?
H.R.
1146.
1146.
All right. Yeah.
Now, we know that's not going to happen. But the point is, we got to start stirring up the national Democrats to rein this guy in.
No kidding.
So, you know, there's nobody in Illinois who can touch him. You guys know this. You've been, you know, how many shows have you done on this topic? So the only way to do it is we got to get someone bigger to start tugging on the leash a little bit and say, Mike, you crossed the line.
I think that's a great strategy.
So that's where we're coming from on
Well,
this.
it's a challenging strategy for those of us who, despite our disagreements on certain issues, don't want to see Rauner elected to the governorship.
No,
And then I have a question, too, about how would the people's lawyer for the state play into this, who happens to be the daughter of Michael Madigan.
Very
Lisa
interesting,
Madigan.
yeah.
But I'm wondering, you know, because she's very good on some things and not so good on other things, but I'm just wondering if she is someone that could receive a little pressure, too.
Well, at the moment, we don't see any violations of law or procedure on this. And once they start codifying this come November in legislation, you know, then we're really...
And this is
deep.
after the election.
Yeah, after the election, of course. So we got to, you know, we have a summer to start putting pieces in place on pushback. And here's where the good news comes in again. We, as you know, for 33 years...
You said again?
Did
Good news again?
Yeah, I started with some good news.
Oh, that's right. you
That
did.
was the plan. Good
Yeah.
news. Then
Good
we go
news.
to the, you know, the
And
stuff.
actually, I
then we come out with
I
the
left
good
out
news.
some other good news, which I'm going to slip in now.
Do it, 'cause
we
I
only
got a
few minutes
question,
left.
and we're gonna
All right.
run out of time.
The good news that happened last week, though, is the dedication of Frack-Free Illinois and a lot of other just
Yes.
public citizens at the grassroots nailed a very bad fracking bill.
Yes.
This was
good.
incredible. Another bill that got slipped in at the last minute 2 weeks ago, which would literally ignore 35,000 public comments against fracking,
Right.
was put in by a legislator from Southern Illinois. Well, Frack-Free Illinois,
country.
with Dr. Laura Chamberlain and others from here in Chicago,
Yeah.
organized something called the Tour de Frack. And it was a 3-day kind of a Chautauqua tour
Exactly.
of various locations. We went to Starved Rock, and we were handing out leaflets against the fracking mine there, the sand
It
mine.
was an excellent
Next
action.
day, we went to Havana, Illinois, talking to people about the tar sands pipeline, which is going
Exactly.
through Illinois. And then the third day, we ended up in the cesspool in Springfield, you know, to do our work there. But anyway, these folks have tirelessly been hammering on the fracking issue and hammering on the fracking issue. And this bill went down in flames last week.
I'm
so
so
it can
glad.
be done, folks. You know,
Yeah.
dedication.
All right, so I'm driving up Chicago Avenue in Evanston, and I go by the new Walgreens, which is a green Walgreens, and they have these big columns with these kind of
Wind turbines.
You're asking
wind
if they're wind turbines.
Yeah, and you know, I recently took a ride down to St. Louis to see a band, and lo and behold, there are more wind turbines, you know, out there in the fields everywhere you go. Couple of things. What's the power of the wind energy people in the state? But what about these little wind turbine units individually? I mean, I think I remember when thinking we wanted to do something at the Heartland, you just can't put up your own.
Right.
But what about that? I mean, it seems to me that between solar energy panels and between some wind turbines, that we could do a lot of production of energy ourselves in our own domains.
Well, we've had some problems over the years interfacing with some of our colleagues in the renewable energy sector. First of all, they never saw nuclear as a threat to the point where they would
Right.
get involved and say they were anti-nuclear. We hope to use this summer to change that message. And we're going to go up to the Wisconsin Renewable Energy Fair and the Illinois Renewable Energy Fair in August to hammer home this message that we got to work together. But I would point out two things. Yes, there are these big wind farms, and they're pretty effective. People don't know that we have over 3,000 megawatts of installed wind power alone in Illinois. And that's 1.5 times the entire output of the 2 Dresden nukes that are operating. So this is not small change.
Yeah.
However, the small wind turbine stuff in urban areas are not as efficient. I have to point that out, and that's one of the things I told you guys. So the first thing that people really have to do with energy is stop using so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're just going to use
Stop
energy
using so much energy. Stop using so much energy.
on a per capita basis, we have to reduce energy consumption. So energy efficiency conservation is where you start. Then you can take a look at what's appropriate for your place. Now, I advised against the wind turbine because I knew you had a lot of flat roof space up there, Mike and Katie, and solar panels would do a pretty good deal, you know?
Right.
And now the prices are coming down on that.
Yeah.
If we get this money freed up from the renewable energy portfolio stuff, we want to see it going in urban areas because that's probably a better bet because you don't need to wire in necessarily if you got a good system. You know, you can actually become a self-contained solar provider, and if you provide enough, you can sell it back to the system.
And
so
I
these
think
are
that's
ways
where
to
the
go.
biggest problem is that to the extent that the nuclear industry has all these subsidies, we can't get the retail pricing set up the right way so that those of us who might put on a solar panel could return our excess energy
That's right.
back to the grid. The pricing just doesn't work.
That's
yet.
right.
Final message from you,
Final message.
Dave Kraft.
Do the Mike Madigan boogie. You know, we have to make a strong showing to fix the renewable portfolio standard, the RPS, in the next legislative session, number one. Number two, understand that it is now nuclear war. The nuclear industry has declared war on renewable energy and efficiency all over the country. Exelon is the cheerleader, the major funder for all of these programs going on nationwide. So we need to take that to the federal level as well, not just the state level. That means Senator Kirk, Senator Durbin, President Obama.
Yep.
And then, you know, the other thing is really confronting these guys every opportunity. Put comments in articles that you see in the paper. I understand Julie Wernow is working on another piece which will appear this weekend. Add your comments.
Who is that? Is she the woman from?
She's a Chicago Tribune reporter who is
Okay.
covering the energy sector and doing a very good job of it. So weigh in at every opportunity, and certainly, last but not least, get involved with one of the major environmental groups that are working on energy, and certainly NEIS would welcome anyone coming on board because we can use all the help we can get to.
Right.
That's www.neis.org.
Dave Kraft, we're so glad we got you to come on the show.
We're so glad you're out there doing what you do.
You got the stuff. You got the info. All the young people are listening to the Saving Energy message.
We want to thank both Eve Brownstone and our guest Dave Kraft. We want to thank Tom Clark for joining us here every time he joins us here. We want to thank the on-site, online, and radio audience. Thank you guys for being here, drinking coffee.
How about
Thank yourselves. And we invite you to like the Live from the Heartland Facebook page, thanking the Heartland Cafe for hosting us. We thank Grant, Nolan, Paul, Mary, Hal. Do good in the world. The world needs all the good
power
that
to
you
the people,
do.
and don't forget, flavor your heart and your soul. Take us out, Twin Peaks. We'll be right back next week. Look forward to having you here.
Keep playing Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
We always
and we
will.
open with Jimi Hendrix. We close out with Twin Peaks. Over and out. Hallelujah.